Did you get a message that is recording?
Yes.
Yes. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on which side of the world you are calling in from. Welcome to the 2024 NAHR Pecha Kucha Reflections on the Experience about Fire as Renewal, Rituals, and Power. We are very happy to be able today to share our reflections. We have most of the fellows from the year participating. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And the webinar is recorded for a later viewer on our YouTube channel, but is also shared now with everyone so that we can really see each other and meet each other, because many of you were in the Taleggio Valley in Italy during the summer, but not everyone at the same time. And so some of you know each other, but others didn't have a chance yet to meet. So it's an opportunity today. There is a group of us that is from the organization that you met there, or maybe you have not. And then we have the fellows from the California Santa Ynez Valley Fellowship that perhaps have met the least amount of fellows not having joined the Italian crew. But welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here. Next. I want to take a moment to reflect and think also of many occurrences that are happening these days in the world. We have the ongoing wars, of course, that are always in our minds. And very recently, the huge flooding that happened in Spain. Though has been with us for several years, and she has been, her family involved directly into the flooding. So I feel that is particularly touching our community, and we wanted to think about them and what is going on with climate change and the hardness that is coming through many communities. And the latest has been a community that in many ways is close to us. So I wanted to spend a second to acknowledge that. Next. As many of you know about NAHR, but some new friends that may be connecting today to join the Pecha Kucha, welcome everyone. NAHR is a research lab, is a think tank and a non-institutionalized space where we think and work positioning our globally focused entity within a local, historical, rich rural community. These images that you see are the one of the community in Val Taleggio. And, but we share it also, this way of working in the community of Santa Ynez. And NAHR is aiming to unfold and display a sensitive type of culture that relates to nature as a source of inspiration and a measure of available resources. And we're doing that in many ways. Next. We are thinking, though, that it's very important to be on site, to be in nature, to talk about nature. This is kind of at the core of our ecological thinking, and is for us the way to really share thoughts and continue developing researches that we feel are critical to enhance the conversation about climate change and about the human and non-human coexistence. Please, next. We do so by being really participatory, and participation is key to NAHR. Many of our community members today are here of our team, but some of us are, in other parts of the world, and they are asleep right now. So I want to thank everyone that has been for the past 10 years working with NAHR and participating in making the community. And some of our team members of today have been fellows in the past years. Next. We have a new community member. Next, Asia, please. We have a new community member, Grazia Signori. Grazia is joining the ambassador team, and it comes to a very critical time in which we are now talking about minerals in 2025, and with her background in geology, it comes really timely. Next. We want also to take a second to thank everyone that is helping us throughout time, especially the Ecomuseum Valtaleggio, that is our host when we are on site also. And there are a lot of people that really make NAHR the machine that it is and working and happening. Thank you. Next. As you have experienced, we have several programs rotating around the fellowship, workshops and presentations, walks, events or closing. And we have closed this year next the European grant that lasted 24 months that really made us think of the message of Leopold about thinking like a mountain. Next. And sometimes we have special events or programs. This year we had the first photographic contest that saw people from many parts of the world sending us photographs for chimneys and fireplaces. And then we have had several shows throughout the summer, and then now is showing in different locations of our greater region of Bergamo. Next. And I'm taking 2 more minutes to mention and announce next year call. It will be about minerals, scaffolders that matter. The call is now open, starting today. So we welcome new applications for the next year. And next, we will have, if you are near Los Angeles, we will have a workshop and a party actually at the beginning of December. Next. But our next in-person event will be on November 9th, where we will launch our book. It has been on the make for 2 years plus. And so we are very happy to be able to present it also to the Los Angeles community. You may recognize on the cover several names from people that are here also today, and others that have really worked hard to make the book happen. And hopefully there will be other presentations in other places. But today we are here next to really reflect on the summer and the spring and fall events around the topic of fire, renewal, rituals, and power. We had about 20 fellows throughout the year of fire. And most of you are here today, thank you, but some people couldn't make it, and we want just to send our greetings to them as well. And the program today is that we are going to hear from each of you for 5 minutes, 5 slides about, and teams may take a few extra minutes. Most of you have chosen to share their screen, so we will just take down now the screen, and in between presentations, I will just mention the name. The program will go till about 11:30. So there will be some time at the end for final closing reflections and thoughts, but in between, we just go one after the other. There is also the chat if people want to, say something on the chat or have a parallel conversation going. That's always a possibility that Zoom allows us to do. So again, thank you everyone, and we are gonna let Andreas, that is in the west side of Canada, I think, west coast of Canada, present and introduce himself.
Yes, thank you, Eladia. Thank you, Asia. Thank you to NAHR. I'll begin sharing my screen here and just go quickly full screen. Yes, everybody can see?
Yes.
Okay, start my 5-minute timer. So yes, my name is Andreas Rutkowskis. I'm joining you today from unceded Syilx territory, the Okanagan Valley of BC, Canada, which only occasionally looks like my background today. Credit to Hieronymus Bosch, an angel leading a soul into hell. So yeah, it's a fire adapted ecosystem. Fire has been kind of at the core of my practice in recent years. I'm a photographer. I also work with video and audio, and I would say I engage with eco-critical principles. Some of my past work has revolved around borders. I spent 3 years documenting the entirety of the Canada-US border. And since moving to the Okanagan in 2017, I've been very fascinated by fire. This was my first time, I should say I was a June Fellow, and it was my first time in Italy ever. So it was, quite beautiful to be welcomed into the Val Taleggio and into the community at NAHR. The first image here, my biopic was made on top of Monte Sodadura, so that might be a familiar icon to some of you. So for this particular approach, I didn't really know what to expect in the Val Taleggio in terms of the magnitude of fire. So I focused on I guess, cultural implications of wildfire. So I was guided by the 3-day symposium at the beginning of the event. Which was largely informative. I learned about how fire has historically been used, and then I set about hiking and doing walks pretty much every day during the month-long residency. And I ended up for the exhibition at the end of that period, making the large plotter print that you see here, which was on the facade of the residence, which was wood that was used to cook the polenta during the symposium. There were other kind of cultural fire artifacts that I had documented in my kitchen studio during that time as well. The, I guess, largest component of my residency focused on the publication, which you see some screenshots of here. It was titled Rekindled. It was an edition of 10 artist books that were printed in Zogno at the print house there. And in that, I juxtaposed my approach during my time at NAHR with some imagery and a text called Orders of Magnitude that focuses on the parallels between fire in the Okanagan and Similkameen valleys, where I currently live, and fire in Italy. So the two images that you see at the right here were from a body of work that I made immediately prior to coming or arriving at NAHR, focusing on a fire called the Crater Creek wildfire, which was 45,000 hectares in magnitude. And during the 3-day symposium that began NAHR, I learned that 45,000 hectares was roughly the total surface area of Italy that burned in 2023. So the booklet, or the artist book, also contains some production stills. It contains some shots that I made during the opening symposium and the lovely people that I met, which were so informative, as well as, I organized some guided hikes where we went out on the Corno Zuccone and took photographs together that, we experienced the aftermath of a human-caused wildfire as a collective. So I think the friendships that and the network that I established during my time in Sotto Chiesa was my most valuable takeaway. I'm still processing some of the work that I made at that time, but you see a selection of A4 prints that were exhibited at the end of the residency period. I was looking at fire pits, looking at wood piles and forest thinning practices, which are running in parallel to practices here in Canada. I was also working with emergency blankets, kind of calling into question the concept of climate refugees, bringing those emergency blankets into the landscape, also working with them at the residence. And, one of the, I guess, more successful images towards the right of the frame here was the image of Virginio's Poyat. I should also, I guess, close by saying I was working with a mixture of ambient and artificial lighting. So I went off with a digital medium format camera and a studio strobe, battery powered studio strobe. So I think in the time there, I hiked around 1,000 kilometers in total. It was really a great experience. and that's 5 minutes. So I'll end it there. But I really look forward to hearing about everybody else's practices. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Andreas. Oops, sorry.
Should I go now?
Yes,
Thank you, Andreas.
Sarina.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Serena. This is quite quick, but I'll go. Hi, I'm Serena. I'm based in Los Angeles, and I'm in school for landscape architecture. Really excited to present to you guys. I was there at the end of the summer in Sotokiesa and had a wonderful time with Abraham, who is probably, I think, presenting at the end of today, and with Asia and Ilaria and a couple of other friends that were there. Just getting into my project, I started with Corno Zuccone and hiking there. Asia and Abraham took me on a hike there on my first day, almost killed me. I'm just kidding. I just haven't left my desk in a long time. And so I started with some drone imagery, and I'll show you a video of some of the drone imagery that I captured. This is just 30 seconds. So I was looking at starting from the lower lands, so the pasture lands, then looking at the forest, moving upwards, and then with the summit. And so my investigation of the site was thinking about these three land typologies, so pastoral land, forest land, and then also like this summit land, and then also thinking about the like ritualistic nature of this site, the recreational nature of the site, and also like restorative aspects and renewal aspects of the site. And so well, there's also something that's really important to mention. I was looking at a book that just came out this year called Designing with Fire by Emily Schlickman and Brett Milligan. And I used their typologies for working with fire to help inspire this work. And so really quickly, I'll just read like a brief way of like thinking about this. So I was thinking about the three typologies that reconfigure our experiences with death and ritual, and yeah, just kind of thinking about new traditions in a historic cultural landscape. Just move to the next slide. So this is just thinking about, for example, like the pastoral land. So the first phase was pastoral, thinking about how to burn a grassy landscape that's a cultural landscape. Then thinking about these forest landscapes and controlled burns, prescribed burns that happen in pockets, and also allow for restoration. And then also thinking about burning that might happen. You can see the Madonna sculpture here that's at the top of the summit that many of you might be familiar with, thinking about new ways of ritual in this place. And so I'm going to skip over the third, which is restoration. That's usually the most common, I think, when we talk about like forest renewal and restoration and burning. And in the indigenous tradition in California is something that you can find extensive research on. But this was thinking, for example, with the pastoral landscape, thinking about horizontal fuel breaks, and just thinking about this cultural landscape because pastoral landscapes in the Taleggio Valley are extremely important. They're productive landscapes, and thinking about how to kind of hold that intention if we're going to be burning, but also allowing for industry to still exist. Yeah, and then I kind of did some iterative drawings on like where fire could be emerging from with some charcoal. And then with this last piece, the thinking about our own perceptions of ritual and using cultural burning, I was thinking about the site being reimagined as a ceremonial site, not just a recreational area. So you walk to the top in a processional fashion, so regrading and thinking about how we approach the site, rather than me hurting, going up in an uphill fashion, but having it be more of like an easier route that everybody can access. And then eventually you get to the top and there can be some sort of ashes spread and like a perpetual fire burning at the summit. That is actually all my slides. I maybe went too quickly, but thank you all so much. I'll move on to the next person.
Right. So if you want, Carrie, it's your turn to share.
Indeed, I am attempting to share my screen. One moment.
Yes.
Maybe you can see it. There we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. I'm Kerry. I'm traditionally trained in stained glass and hot metal casting, and performance as well with hot material, mainly hot metal and hot glass. But in this case, I was performing directly with fire. A lot of my work is influenced by furnace rituals and our human need to control fire and control hot materials to be able to make things in craft or in industry. And I have a special area of interest in West African iron smelting, where there's a lot of anthropomorphization of the furnace and a lot of birthing rituals surround working with the furnace. There you go, that's my next slide. So the body of work that I made whilst at NAHR consisted of a series of ritual performances, lighting fires on and around my body to simulate a temporary glimpses of pregnancy. It's like a spiritual pregnancy, because I can't have children myself, so the way that I experience that full resolution of pregnancy is through the temporary moment of lighting fires and seeing life exist. The title of the project, Ectogenesis, refers to an unnatural creation or a reproduction outside of the female body. And I was seeking out shrines in the maternal landscape that I realized more and more was related to Madonna, which was had an incredible spiritual significance to the work that I was producing. I wanted to talk about this particular ritual that I did. It's not a very strong photograph. The documentation for it in itself wasn't very successful, but it was probably the most exciting experience, or the most relevant experience that I had whilst creating these rituals, where I lit a fire between my legs during a thunderstorm, but I'd waited 12 hours during the day for that thunderstorm to come without eating anything, because before these rituals I was fasting to make sure the only thing that was in my belly that I could gestate was the fire. So 12 hours of waiting, and then something bigger and incredibly daunting was happening around me whilst this little fire was breathing and living, and then the rain put it out, which was quite a beautiful experience in the maternal landscape and then with the storm. So I did 7 rituals overall. This first image here, number 4, was a ritual where I lit a fire in a fire blanket and held it close to me like it was a little baby. Which I then took the fire blanket and did this painting. So I became quite obsessed with icon paintings. And I think because Italy has such an incredible culture surrounding it, but subverting the imagery within the icon paintings. And it's not Madonna and child, it's Madonna devouring child. This image became incredibly significant towards me producing the fires, creating life, and then devouring and consuming life and recreating life, and becoming this cyclical, temporary, continual image. So the 7th ritual, or the 7th performance, was on our open day. And it kind of became a day of rest for me in a perhaps biblical sense, because I wasn't actually the person creating or experiencing the rituals. Instead, I was facilitating other people to sit under this structure, this shrine that I'd created, with the painting of Madonna devouring child above. You can see Asia pictured there very beautifully. Quite a lot of the fellows and people associated with NAHR came and sat above a fire. This idea of being warmed from underneath and gestating the potential of life, but only temporarily. People could come and sit for as long as they liked and then move away. And it was quite a lovely process, because people who did or didn't have children, did or didn't want children, were or were not female, were able to come and sit over the fire and experience this simulation of pregnancy, which is quite lovely. And then where potentially this project is going next, I'm still incredibly obsessed with this image of the Madonna devouring child, and I've been creating icon paintings and stained glass windows using this image. I'm not sure where it's going, but I've recently started a job where I'm learning how to do glass blowing and how to teach glass blowing. And this is one of the furnaces in our hot shop. And just working with the molten glass as a material on the end of your iron, and you're shaping it and creating life in this material, and then you put it back into the furnace and it blobs up again if you leave it too long, and it kind of transforms back into the state that it from whence it once came. And then when the glass cools down, you can recycle it and put it back into the furnace and melt it down again. So there's this complete devouring nature of the fire with the material, and you have to be so quick and controlling to be able to create something that is then permanent. So for me, it's quite a temporary experience through the process as well. So I've been thinking a lot about that. And I've probably spoken way too quickly, but returning to the furnace. But yes, thank you. I'll move on to the next person.
Thank you. Fantastic. Mish, it's your turn now.
Thank you. I wanted to actually bring some fire. I don't know if you can see in my screen, but this is from my Day of the Dead altar. And there's just so much to share here. I was at NAHR for 2 weeks, and I feel like just like this presentation, it's not long enough. So I will quickly go through. I am an interdisciplinary artist and architect. Here I have an image of me teaching the nonas how to make fungi like lasagna. It was my way to start introducing fungi as a communal event, and from there I was in my exhibition starting to integrate into the space. I have a floor plan of the room I occupied, and each one of those images in the right hand is a meditation I did with fire in some form, either as charcoal or within the group we ate together a lot, and we talked about fire a lot, and it sort of wove itself through our group and our communal aspects. This is a piece with that I did in collaboration with Carrie, and you can see on the bottom left that she's laying with a candle and some mycelium. The candle was purchased from a pilgrimage that we did walking from Salzana. Well, we started in Pizzino and we walked down to Salzana, and it was this beautiful, like, weaving through the forest with a community of people and experiencing sacred points in the community. The image on the right is a chessboard I made of mycelium and burned ashes from our mini cooking events together, and I gathered snails the night before, and it was this sort of new approach to chess that was sort of essential and unstrategic. Essential. Well, the snails wanted to escape the chessboard, but I think mycelium and fungi have that very non-strategic approach, even though it is strategic, and it's very organic and fluid and uncontained in some ways. The last slide is inspired by my thoughts on the lack of a ceasefire in Gaza, and mycelium is incredibly resilient, and in context of a fire residency, I wanted to have a moment to honor the struggle that's happening right now and offer it as a meditation to the people of Palestine. I meditate with a tribal leader once a week here, and I have just been impressed upon the magnitude of the impacts of genocide and how tragic it can be. The image in the bottom right, there is an altar that I was able to give to a group that was protesting in France, and it was just it was a beautiful moment of sharing the collective hope that there can be a ceasefire, and each of these pieces ties into that narrative in one way or the other. Thank you.
Nice, thank you. Now it's Heidi and Rachel that are going to share the screen.
Hello. Let me get my share. Mish, thank you for sharing. And Ilaria, thank you so much for hosting this. There we go. Okay. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And Rachel, you're on audio?
I'm here. Hi.
Hi. I'm Heidi Ross. I'm a chef and multidisciplinary artist, and I spent 2 weeks in Santa Ynez. The first week by myself, and the second week I invited my collaborator, Rachel Beats. She's a musician and sound artist and composer. And actually, I'll let her introduce herself in just a moment. Yeah, I am a chef, but I use food like more as a medium, and so I explore sentience and interspecies connections through sound and taste and movement and new media. And I'll let Rachel introduce herself.
Yeah. So just for those of you still seeing Misha's tab, it looks like you can at the top of Zoom, you can yeah, it's gone, maybe gone now. Okay, great. Yeah, so I am a musician, composer, sound artist, and I have been developing this collaboration with Heidi in her performances to really enhance the sounds of her cooking and of her sensing, and that's what we've been what we explored in that second week.
Okay. So our project for this residency was mainly around gathering sounds of fire, and specifically food that was introduced to fire, and with the intention of listening, first of all. And Rachel, actually, we did a lot of like deep listening exercises, and Rachel taught me about deep listening, which listening in general has just, as a practice, has been transformative for me. And it's kind of changed the way I move through the world. So I felt really, it was just such a great experience to get to go even deeper into a listening practice, guided by Rachel. And so, yeah, we gathered sounds of food, and then we also and we played with them. Rachel fed them through her synth, and she did some layering and distorting. And we also gathered sounds of a lot of materials that sounded like fire. So the other thing that we also did was we did a lot of somatic presencing. So that was like, it looked like mirroring of each other, and touching of the land that we were staying on, gathering, foraging foods, and putting them on our bodies. I did a little bit of fire embodiment dance kind of play. And so we're going to play, let's see if I can play this. We're going to play just some sounds that we
I'm not hearing anything. Is anyone else?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So here's a link if you want to go and pull it up on your own. So this is a link to a mix that I did of the grilling that Heidi did and some of the play. There were tomatillos drying nearby, and the shells kind of had this sound memory of fire, and so it's a mix of actual fire and sonic memory of fire. As a sound artist, when I'm recording something, I'm evaluating, what it sounds like, and then when I'm mixing it, I'm trying to like recreate that memory or match that memory in the computer to what it was as a lived experience, because the microphone doesn't listen in the same way that I do. And in this way, I really think of sound as a kind of touch, where it is a physical touch if you think about how the sound waves go into our ear canal, and then the bones of the ear touch the membrane, and the waves make a physical touch, and then the membrane transforms to a liquid, and then the liquid to neuron. And so that's how we hear is this kind of touch. And Heidi also, I think, considers like a taste as a form of touch as well.
Yeah, I in kind of in Western art history, it's taste and sound and touch are seen as some of the softer senses. They're not given priority because I think it's kind of seen as like a subjective experience. But when you think about touch and taste and even sound, it's we are defining who we are in relation to something else. So taste is about taste strawberry. So it's not just what I'm experiencing. I'm experiencing the world around me and learning what it is by coming into contact with it. So here's some pictures of what we did a lot of like materials exploration. These were some figs that I foraged on the land, and then I sprinkled them with sugar and torched them and got a little brulee. So I gathered some recording of that. And then these are also some foraged items. We have the pomegranate and walnuts and rosemary. And that is a bowl full of water with a hydrophone, which we cracked open the pomegranates and dropped those into the bowl and played with those sounds as well. We did that in a final performance. And then you can see I had a large like butcher paper that was laid out that was just kind of a free form diary or journal for the 2 weeks there. And I had a lot of I brought some chains which I hung and would build sculptures and play with the space with. And then that particular picture was some charcoal from a dinner that I made for myself that I just kind of sprinkled over the chain. And the last part, what we'll leave you with, let me see if I can play this.
Yeah, so to connect our somatic experience, our listening and our mirroring to fire, I think of time as a musician as this like beautiful space between the past and the future. And it's this like moment where I'm in the present, I'm making a sound, but I'm also evaluating like a memory of the past sound in order to project sound into the future. And it's this cycle that I'm in when I'm in a performance or making music. And at the end of the week, I realized that fire is this moment of presence, that I think someone has already mentioned this, that it's this cyclic, this changing from one state to another. And to me, that's also what sound is, or what performance is, or having a somatic experience is.
Yeah, and just to elaborate on that, we saw fire as kind of a mirror of humanity as well. It's a creator of culture, used for survival, community, evolution, destruction, death, renewal, birth, and meaning-making ritual, which we attempted to embody that whole cycle during our residency. And the final slide, that's a picture. Rachel, in our final performance, Rachel was sitting next to me, and we had a sound table that was mic'd up with contact mics, and we did a performance with steaming water that was heated by fire, and a walnut that we lit on fire, and also the bowl of water with pomegranates. And Rachel made a beautiful sound score that we might be able to share with you.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I put the link in there of the mix that we played before that kind of encapsulates the story of this performance from the fire starting into the hearing the kettle go off. So
All right.
thank you.
That's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
So now it's Monty. I will share for you, Monty. One sec.
Hello. That's an image of myself. I'm Monty and I am a poet. Wait, yeah, maybe let's stay on the intro.
Yeah, sorry.
No. I don't even have that. Well, okay, no. So I'm a poet. I call myself a transdisciplinary poet, because I work in kind of, or like my writing and my work in poetry sort of expresses itself in a lot of different media often. I work with performance. I do a lot of stuff on the radio. I publish things. I'm an editor. And I also do translation, which is the project that actually brought me to NAHR. I think maybe we can go on the next slide and see what's gonna happen there. Okay, so this is a selfie of me on the valley. So I guess I just wanted to say that I was in the valley this summer, but it was my second time at NAHR. The first time I met the residency as a poet going to the eco poetry workshop, which was kind of like a special project that NAHR did, and I think maybe it continues to do every now and then. But I joined in 2019, and was kind of like the project that I was doing there was very much framed around what it means to write in and next and through ecological concerns. Anyway, but so this year I kind of, a full confession, snuck my way back into the residency as a translator, because I got some funding from the Goethe Institute to research into translating a book by the Italian poet Alda Merini, who is a really, in Italy, very well-known contemporary poet. She was born in 1930 and died in 2009. But not much of her work has been translated into English or German. I'm working with English, German, and Italian. Anyway, and so I thought of coming back to NAHR also. I mean, obviously, because this is an Italian poet who actually also lived most of her life in Milan, as is, some hours, not that many hours away from Bergamo. So actually it was pretty special. I'm also being very nonlinear in my presentation, but it was pretty special that at the final reading that we did, or where I shared some of my translations that I had been working on, someone actually knew or was like actually a friend of Alda Merini, like one of the people who joined the final sharing in the village. So that was pretty special. But anyway, so I got this funding to do this translation project of Alda Merini, and I thought of NAHR also because so of course it's like the language, it's the region, but I do actually want to believe too that like something happens to my writing and something happens to my translation practice if I put myself into a place and allow myself to be touched and I like to say contaminated by that place. Like I was really excited to kind of translate specifically in the valley because I have met it in 2019 also as a place of exchange and conversation and encounter. And I really wanted to see what would happen if I would start doing this translation project in that place. Maybe let's see what the next slide is. Oh my gosh, I'm already long. Okay, well, so this is just the book cover of the book that I was working with. And kind of just describing a little bit like there is also connections to fire that are pretty easy to make with, I mean, translation as a sort of the metaphor of translation is like one often thinks about it as like a kind of transformation from one material into a different kind of material is how many people think of translation. And so that kind of shares something with the properties of like fire as a kind of transformational force. And then also in the writing of Ada Marini herself, she is very like her poetry is really marked by sort of like emotional intensity, emotional fire, one might say. That kind of, yeah, I sort of found it actually really fruitful to be surrounded by all of these incredible artists that I was sharing my residency space with, working continuously with fire and doing all of these fire rituals because it really actually suited the poetry that I was translating. What's the next slide? I feel like I'm already over time, but
I think it's finished.
okay. Oh, great. Well, then that's that. Thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you, Monty. So we'll stop. And now it's Frank's turn.
Hello. Give me just a moment to share my screen.
Sure.
Okay. All right, so my name is Frank. I am a scientific educator, beekeeper, sound artist. I have a nonprofit project where I teach about pollinators and pollination ecology that I started in New York, and then I was in California, and now I'm actually in Alabama. So traveling, I've mixed it around the country, and I like to do these types of things to kind of take pollinator science and teach it in a different way. I was really happy for the opportunity to be a part of this particular residency because fire is so central to beekeeping. But also, as I was at this residency, I learned more and more about how fire is essential to many, many bees. And so initially, the project that I had in mind was to recontextualize the beekeeping instrument of a smoker. It's one of the most recognizable things within beekeeping. Everybody knows the smoker. And when I had moved from New York to California, I was extremely paranoid to beekeep there because, I thought I was going to be the person who moved from New York and, set the place on fire with my beekeeping smoker. And so I was finding different ways to work the hives with sugar water, et cetera, et cetera. And so when I had the opportunity to come here, what I wanted to do was deconstruct the smoker and recontextualize it as an instrument of communication of music and to kind of communicate the things that I had learned while on residency, which is contrary to how it's actually used in a beehive, which is actually to mask the communication and pheromones of the bees and kind of freak them out and distract them from stinging me repeatedly in the face and hands. So when I had gotten here, my original project was to create kind of some facsimile to a honey show using very important plants to honeybees and native bees in the area. Normally at a honey show, you see jars of honey that are displayed and they have little cards and they say the notes and flavors, aromas, et cetera, et cetera. What I wanted to do was go out and collect the plants that I had kind of learned about being important to bees and burn them, put those in jars, and have a different information card, a card about how it is important to bees, in which ways. Is it habitat for them? Is it food for them, etc.? Also, how it is important to us and how it has been used in traditional fire regimes, indigenous fire regimes in California. And also how the plant itself has adapted or not adapted to fire. And so that was the project, and I had taken a lot from the book Tending the Wild to pick plants that had that intersection between us and the bees and California native history. And then I was also listening to podcasts on fire and really learning about myself in the process, because, part of the history of fire in California is fear of fire and tension over that fear of fire. And I kind of realized that I was playing directly into that, right? I came to California with that fear of lighting my smoker, of using my instrument, which is a necessary tool for my practice, when in reality, there are safe ways to use any tool, and they're beneficial, and, fear only creates negative scenarios. And so going further into that, I was deconstructing the smoker, so completely taking it apart and trying to make different musical instruments out of different parts of it. And this may or may not play.
You have to activate the sound in your computer.
I figured we'd just watch it. So that's what I was doing. I was trying to, again, recontextualize the smoker and turn it into different instruments, using percussion and wind. And also I had the good fortune to meet a lot of people while on this residency. And one of them was Tristan Partridge, who you can kind of see here underneath the hat. And he was a sound collaborator on this project. And one of the elements of the smoker at the bottom is a grill. And Tristan had the idea to plug the smoker, basically the grill rather, into the naked jack and run it through the synthesizer and have it crackle like fire. And at the end of the residency, everybody was able to play these instruments. And so we were kind of collaborating on the sound, so everybody got a feel for kind of what that was like. And I also had brought in some pieces of charcoal that I had found up in the mountain, and we made a community drawing as well. And on the side here, you can see kind of the layout of how I had the plant cards and how it told about why these were important to bees, how they have adapted to fire, and how they were traditionally used in fire regimes. And yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to have done this. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot more about bees, which are my area of study. And it was really great meeting all the people. And thank you for listening to the presentation.
Thank you. So now it's Anna, and I will share for you the screen.
Thank you, Asia. Hello to everyone. I want to thank all for this moment, particularly Asia and Ilaria. And today I talk by myself, but I represent all my colleagues, because I were at NAHR with Benedetta Repetto and Giacomo Scapin. So we were there as a trio. And you can go with the next slide, Asia. So you can see us. We are three friends, first of all, and we met thanks to our passion for ceramic, because all the three of us comes from different cities, linked together by a deep-rooted history of ceramic. And so we work with fire, because when you work with clay, in this part, there is a strong part of the process. Fire is a strong part of the process. And You can go on, Asia. So I think that in NAHR, the first thing that we have discovered is that fire is relational. As you can see, we have met a lot of people before coming to NAHR and also at NAHR, because NAHR for us was an opportunity to grow, to get involved, and to discover a new dimension of shared research, and to thanks the fire. You can go on, Asia. And the title of our project is a circular kiln. So we have created a kiln. A kiln is a oven suitable for ceramic. And the main idea is to connect our ideas to the main way of being and live in the mountain. And there, everything has a sense. Every materials in the mountain is important, and it is part of a cycle. So we connected to the idea of this cycle, and we have presented this kiln that all the part of the kiln gets cooked after the firing and as a second life. So this idea of circularity was our main idea for this project. As you can see, the kiln, all the parts of the kiln are something. The dome is all made up by bottles, and the chimney is made by different vases, and the base of the kiln, the floor, is all made up by tiles made by hands by us. Okay, Asia. And so our project was made in different steps. The first phase was to collect all the materials inside the valley and to know and try to understand their values. Like we have collected clays, different clays from the valley. Here in the first photo you can see, how can I say in English? Cenere? Ash coming
Ashes.
from the, yes, from the valley. And then we have created all the objects that compose the kiln. So we hand built a lot of different objects, like all the bottles inside the dome and other things. And in the second photo, you can see Giacomo working on the wheel. And there you can see again the idea of circularity. And after all these intense businesses, I think it was my favorite part to construct the kiln and to bring all together. And so you can see the three of us working together in this construction of the kiln. And then at the end, we have presented the firing. It was the core of the project, and it was for me and for us a great moment where all the people that we are met there were there, and we also worked effectively with fire at that moment, and it was very strong and very beautiful. Thank you, Asia. And then, okay, there is just this photo. You can see the inner structure of the kiln, so the dome, how it was built. And after this cooking, we had a lot of different objects that has a second life after this firing. Thank you. Thanks to all.
Thank you, Anna. I will stop, and then now it's Andrew.
I am going to share, and then I'm going to try to put it in presentation mode so that you can see without the stuff on the margins. So, let me see here. Hi, my name is Andrew, and I am an artist and architect living in Los Angeles. And
Andrew, sorry, do you mind to do the full screen? Is it
yeah,
possible?
yeah, let me, sorry everybody, slideshow, um, from beginning. How's that? Better, right?
Better. Great.
Okay.
Thank
Can
you.
everyone hear me well? Okay. If you can't, just like yell at me.
You're good. You're good.
I'm an artist and architect. I live in Los Angeles. I'm really interested in the reciprocal relationship between social and political forces in the built environment. When I examined this theme of fire, my mind moved very quickly to the concept of a blank slate, which is very popular, always a concept in architecture, also known as tabula rasa. So my project is called Strati di tabula rasa, or layers of the blank slate. And in architecture, a blank slate is something, for example, that was left after the Chicago fire of 1873, which allowed the modern skyscraper city to be born in kind of the architectural story. Because fire erased so much of what was there, it allowed something completely new and transformative to happen. So from the beginning, my thoughts about fire were tied up with human development to the extent that I started thinking about human development as a metaphor for fire, both in its destructive and its transformative possibilities. Of course, I don't really subscribe to the concept of blank slate. I'm always about context. I think there's context always, even if it's not visible. So that led immediately to a paradox that was pretty fruitful as it turned out. And this photo on the left is me presenting part of my work in Valtaleggio. So I immediately zeroed in on layers. I bought a lot of transparent, translucent paper here in LA and carried it out there with me on the plane. And a lot of markers and pens that I could just explore layering, translucency, and sort of the palimpsestic nature of the site. Also, I realized pretty quickly that fire in Valtaleggio is very different than fire in California. And also this sense of history is very different. But I was delighted to find that there's a Roman concept of a blank slate, if you will, like the Roman imperial or colonial city was pretty much out of the box. So whenever imperial Rome would develop a new city, it would look remarkably similar. So they call it a kit of parts. Like you always know where the forum is, you always know where the temple is, you always know where the arena is. And Milan, which is not too far away, whose name comes from Mediolanum, as a Roman city, was kind of a blank slate city back in the day. So I hiked around the area. I looked at the landscape, responded really strongly to the landscape. I wasn't quite prepared for the Italian pre-Alps. You hear a lot about them. I've climbed a lot of mountains, been down the Grand Canyon a few times, but this was just overpowering in its own way. It was fantastic and magnificent and rustic, but kind of civilized. Had a cappuccino every morning with a choice of 2 or 3. The prominent local feature is Corno Zuccone, which kind of towers in the distance near Valtaleggio, and it's a great mountain to climb. It's a challenge, it's steep, and there is a trace of fire all over the slopes. That center photo in the bottom is a burn area, but the fires in the Alps are pretty contained. They're not cataclysmic, and a lot of the agricultural land was actually cleared by fire back in the day, so that was interesting. I looked at Corno Zuccone and other mountains. I had a laptop, so I was able to tile some photos, but I mostly worked by hand. It was really refreshing to have to just work with the tools at hand and kind of go low tech. So I established a baseline based on that mountain line, which is an approximate baseline. And I also, these drawings are kind of an approximation of Valtaleggio. I made the decision early not to try to adhere to the exact topography. So this is kind of an imaginary reconstruction of Valtaleggio with all these layers of geology and hydrology and agriculture and development. And then, as you see a little version here, fire at the end. But I thought a lot about this baseline and how to attack that in terms of an architectural proposal. And one way is to take the baseline in the upper left and just flatten it, like literally make a blank slate that's flat. And that's kind of horrifying to degrade the beautiful natural topography this way, but we do it all the time. So I'm looking at this in a more satirical way to bring out response. The second one, the lower left, was to accept this waving mountain line as a given, but take that as the baseline. Let's just presume that gravity always goes perpendicular to the ground. So this is a complete piece of nonsense, but so whatever way the ground is going, your building is perpendicular to it. So as this ground undulates, your landscape undulates. So you could like lean out your window and put something on the roof of your neighbor's house because they'd be perpendicular to each other because of the landscape. The third one was just looking at the slope, kind of coming halfway back to rationality and looking at it like a staircase or a terraced landscape like we see, but really exploiting some of the possibilities of that with different buildings being adjacent. So this was my analysis after my research, which the research consisted of a lot of hiking. And then my final proposals, the lower left is gravity being completely local. So that's the church and some of the surrounding buildings there in Soto Chiesa. And you can see how distorted they get because no two adjacent buildings will be on the same line. The middle one is a proposal for NAHR headquarters as sort of a like a Mission Impossible style lair where we take advantage of the slope to dig into the hill. And I think we have a search and rescue helicopter there and other fun things. The right-handed one caused the most consternation and gasps and kind of delight among the audience during my proposal. And this was something Ilaria helped prod me to realize, that if I really want to take this logic to the conclusion, I have to find the most precious thing in the local environment and completely disrespect it. So I had to level Corno Zucconi and turn it on the top one into a planned community called, I think it's called Zucconi Heights. And that's a nice planned community where all your needs will be pleasantly met. Of course, it's named after the thing that it completely erased, which is common in these kinds of developments. And the bottom one is Zucconi Towers, speaking to our perennial impulse to dominate the landscape. So I inserted a large tower block, which could house the population of the region. And that blanket of solar panels covering the right slope of Corno Zucconi is a nod towards green development. So this is completely carbon neutral, self-sustaining tower that is on top of Corno Zucconi. So, and that's a nice highway leading up to it, and the tunnel goes into the below-grade parking. So that was at least a few members of the audience laughed and chuckled and said fire would be worse, would be better than this. And I had to agree, but I really found this whole experience really liberating. It was a chance for me to take some of my ideas further because it took it out of the context of LA where I work and kind of allowed me to see how I could road test these ideas in a different context out of my element, how I could work without a lot of digital resources, and how I could continue to look through architectural ideas to express in a satirical or irreverent way that I hope gets at something more important in questions of our built environment. And I'm either over or under my time, but I thank you. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Andrew.
Sharing now.
Abraham, it's your turn.
Thank you. I'll share my screen. Here we go. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Ilaria and Azia. It's really nice to see you all, see some familiar faces from this summer, and to hear about everyone's work. My name's Abraham Dietz Green. I am an artist, an actor, singer, dancer from New Jersey in the United States. On the left over here, I kind of have a short manifesto I wrote about art and specifically kind of theater, because that's the modality that I mostly work in. I study theater and dance and cognitive science at Northwestern right now. And aside from that, I really love hiking and traveling and playing guitar and playing board games and card games. And it turns out that those were all really, really useful passions, not only for my work, but just my time in general at NAHR. One of the absolute highlights of my trip was learning about the game Buraco. I have introduced it to all of my friends, and they are just as, well, almost as obsessed as I am, which has really been quite rewarding. So in general, the 2 weeks that I spent in NAHR were very, very deeply rewarding, from the views, the sunsets, the hikes, the waterfalls, to most importantly, the people and the relationships and the connections and the friendships that I made. Up on the top left, there's a picture of me and Carol, who was one of the other folks there, and then two friends we made from Ghana and Burkina Faso when we did a little cultural exchange where we taught them some dance styles that we knew, and they shared some dance styles that they were familiar with us, just kind of as a way to make a connection and share some culture. Specifically, my project focused on kind of how we develop character as actors. And so most schools of thought around acting, and there are quite a few, focus on the psychology of characters. And I love that. And they focus on, kind of exploring what's the emotional reality that characters are living in, and how can we understand that, and then eventually, after understanding the inside emotional life of the character, then take the next step towards embodiment. And I was wondering if we could kind of approach it from the other way around, using a physical movement style like dance, as well as elements of nature and fire, if we could start with those three and then see what kind of character emerges from that. And so I had these four elements: character, nature, dance, and fire. And I just kind of started to put different combinations of them together to see what would emerge. And so a couple examples, when I put together nature and character, I came up with this sort of idea of physicality walks, where I would kind of spend an hour going on a hike. But during that time, instead of kind of moving through the world as myself, I would move through the world as a certain character, a certain person that I had seen. As an example, when I hiked up to this viewpoint in Piceno, I saw this little boy kind of running through this little village, and he had just had such a specific type of physicality and way of moving through the world. And so I spent the next portion of my hike, the next hour or so, kind of moving as this little boy instead of myself. And when I put together dance and character, that led to some physical embodiments where I might kind of say, well, what if I read a scene, what is this character experiencing? Maybe a 3-word version is something like, let me in. That's what he wants from his scene partner. And I would, spend 20 minutes, put that on a timer, and just kind of move and let that sort of be the engine for my movement. And instead of kind of over-intellectualizing it, just see what kind of movement emerges from that. But things really got exciting when I added in fire. And that kind of led to this first performance that I did, which was called Dancing Flame. And the idea was that maybe instead of thinking of embodying a human character, the character could be an element of nature. And this is something Ilaria and I talked about quite a bit. So this piece was sort of, what would it be like if my character was a fire, and I began as a pile of wood, and I was lit, and then became kind of a roaring flame, and then eventually got whittled down to just a glowing ember, and then put out entirely. And so that was a really interesting and rewarding experience for me. And so I sort of expanded that for this final project to kind of explore two things. Number one, what would the sort of longer life cycle of a flame be, where it's not just starting with the lighting of a match or a piece of wood, but where does that wood come from? And can I kind of like connect it so we sort of get that whole cyclical idea? And number two, is there a way to kind of use the body of a dancer to not highlight or centralize the dancer, but actually centralize kind of the world and the elements around them? And so these pictures are a little blurry, apologies, but this was a piece called The Roots Remain, and it was a bit longer, and it sort of tracked through the longer life cycle of a fire. So beginning with the nutrients, getting to the roots of of a tree, and then that tree growing, and then eventually kind of being chopped down, and then that wood being used for a fire, going through that same life cycle of a fire that I talked about earlier, and then ultimately from that fire, what kind of rebirth and renewal comes from it. And because there's certain plants that can only grow in the presence of fire. And it was inspired because I found this field that had these beautiful trees, as you can see, but also these tree stumps. And I was just thinking about kind of the imagined life of a tree that is no longer there, but was cut down. So that was kind of the final project I did, and I sort of put together a framework that I think hopefully can be useful to other actors, where it sort of tries to answer the questions of what exercises can we employ that allow us to centralize dance, nature, and fire as means of developing character. And I directed a show earlier this year and sort of used those exercises with the actors, and found it to be really, really useful and sort of a new and somewhat innovative approach to putting together character. So that was my project, and that was my presentation.
Yeah, thank you. So now it's Francesca. I will try to share the video that Francesca made.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry I couldn't make it for the live event, but I'll be on a train at the time of the Zoom session. So I recorded this presentation to share with you, and I'll share the slides. I hope it works. All right. So my name is Francesca. I'm a multidisciplinary artist from Italy, and I'm currently based between Rome and Los Angeles. My work often involves organic and found materials that I encounter while experiencing diverse environments. I engage with these elements through tactile processes, working across assemblage, installation, and performance. The works that result from these processes are an exploration of the correlation between my being, so existence, and time and matter. And for these reasons, my practice is process-based and site-specific. I also often work with ephemeral materials, and this directly connects to my experience at NAHR, because at NAHR, I was given the opportunity to work with fire as a medium, which was the perfect occasion for me to further explore ephemerality. And my project at NAHR consisted of working with the different stages of a fire to capture that ephemeral moment in time. And to do that, I used paper, not with a consideration to paper as a material, but more as a container, a vessel to collect the flames. I started by touching the flames with paper to record their traces, and then with a similar process, I worked with the remnants of the fire by rubbing the paper on its char and ashes. This is what the process looks like, and these are the beautiful photographs taken by Carrie Collison, so let's thank her. What is important for me to say about these images is that they're not culturally made, meaning that they're not a product of culture or intention. They're the record of an event, in this case, fire. So they're an automatic image. They resemble paintings, abstract paintings, but they're not. And I often play with this concept of presenting the fluidity of the boundaries between nature and culture, or the external world and art, and questioning what is art or what simply exists. I could talk for hours about this, but I don't want to exceed my time, so I'll stop myself here, even if this connects to other things that are important to my practice. But I really hope this brief presentation was enough to have an introduction about my work and on this project that I made for NAHR. And if you want to see more details or read more about this project, I'll be uploading everything on my website soon, and I'll share the link with NAHR, so it'll be available. Thank you so much to NAHR for giving me this opportunity, and I really hope to connect more with you soon. Thank you, and bye to all.
We had two recordings, Francesca and Marvin. Francesca is traveling and Marvin is in Australia doing his PhD in anthropology on fire and interviewing people there.
All right, I hope this works. So this is a pre-recorded message or presentation because I just arrived a few hours ago in Melbourne, and there it is right now, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm hopefully asleep. That being said, my name is Marvin Heine, and I'm an environmental anthropologist from Berlin. And I'm researching as part of my PhD project the sensory and affective experiences of wildfires and the question of how these experiences are understood and acted upon. This means that I'm researching wildfires from the particular lens of the anthropology of the senses. And there's this one key assumption, and that is that the way how we see, feel, hear, taste, and touch this world is always conditioned by culturally specific narratives and storylines. And when it comes to climate change and to forest fires, those are events which are just drenched in particular kinds of stories. Stories which, on the one hand, have a strong influence on how people in the acute emergency situation navigate a disaster, but also stories which have a strong impact on how people on a more broader level, how if they are more petrified or fearful when they think about their future and climate change, or if they feel confident and empowered by those stories. Yeah, and this is kind of my main job, that I'm collecting a lot of stories. Stories by, on the one hand, experts like firefighters and foresters and engineers, or climatologists or whatever. And on the other hand, stories from people who experienced a fire or who are at risk of experiencing a wildfire. And then also, I'm talking with as many creatives and artists as possible, because these are the people who usually have a really strong sensitivity to this kind of ambiguity and uncertainty inherent to climate change and to disasters. And this is why I was really lucky and grateful that I could be part of the Nature, Art and Habitat residency in Soto Chiesa this year. It was great. And this was one of the most important aspects actually of those many weeks, that I was just spending day in, day out surrounded by artists, by potterers and photographers and sound artists and poets. And we all worked on the subject of fire. And I learned so much from their way of sensing and making sense of this particular element. And it like really strongly enriched my own understanding of it in my own research. So that was just incredible. But besides this, I also did what I always do. I reached out to as many people as possible to conduct interviews. And as part of this, I talked with, for example, one person, like the forest police chief of the Piedmont region, who was in charge of overseeing a firefighting operation during a large fire in 2017. I also talked with a person who develops data sensors. I talked with locals who lived there in this region for a long time and who have this strong knowledge about traditional firefighting techniques. I also met with like this incredible speleologist who researches local fire rituals. Yeah, and I talked with many more people, so I collected like a dozen of interviews, which are just like like a raw jewel for my PhD project, and this was just incredible. But besides this, I also applied at NAHR. Like in my application, I wrote that I'm going to create a multimodal, poetic, audiovisual installation. And for a very long time, I did not really know if I can do it, and if so, what I will do. But in the end, I think it all worked out perfectly. So I did three particular things. So I got this whole garage, which I could use for the final exhibition. And on the one hand, like from the very first moment on, I recorded everything with my camera. So I recorded the interviews, the forests, the fires, and I edited it all into this small 3-part short film. And I overlaid it with a poem that I wrote. And so you can see it on this image here on the left side. There was then this video running on loop with the poem being spoken out in the background. Besides this, I also worked through all of the interview transcripts of the interviews that I did, and I selected pieces or sentences or phrases that I found particularly interesting and printed them on big pieces of paper, and I attached them to those steel frames as if they were art pieces. And I put them also in this exhibition space. And finally, I also, like while I was walking with this forest police chief through the burned forest, I collected big pieces of charcoal from the burned forest, and I put them on a piece of white canvas, and I invited everyone, all the participants and all the visitors, to use those memories, those remnants of a fire, to draw something or to write their name or whatever. And the people did it actually. And yeah, so this was like my kind of artistic outcome of this whole project. So it was really a mosaic of things that I experienced there and that I could take home. And I'm incredibly thankful and grateful for everything that happened there. So yeah, thank you, NAHR. Thank you, everyone who's here today, and have a good day.
So I'm just taking the minutes to thank everyone. It was really fun to see everybody's projects. As interrupt me anytime, just when you're ready, right?
Yeah.
And to see also some recurring elements, how they've been, reinterpreted from Andrea's kind of full approach observation and almost worshipping of Monte Zuccone to the one of envy, or the similar names, opposite approaches to the same place, and and many others, to the making and the community building of Anna's trio with the locals. That was really something special, that everyone engaged with the making of the fire. To Abraham, we want to know more about your new show, if there is a way to hear it, and the similarities of Frank and Heidi, in a way, playing with sound, both of you in some ways this year at the California residency, 6 months apart. We'll continue. I just want to let Asia now present herself.
Yeah.
Go.
Okay, so I'm Asia, and so I will just present a bit myself. I was in the organization of NAHR. Nowadays, I'm writing my master thesis of history of art. I'm in a master in Urbino in the center of Italy, but I was in German, finished my studies. I'm doing a thesis about the Art Academy in Jerusalem, so in an area a bit dramatic nowadays. But for me, it's really interesting because it's really about historical point of view of a complex European set, and also about craft. That it's something that I really also like to do. I have done also an Academy of Art, and I'm still trying to do something like that in my career. I was in the NAHR organization. So I was in Sottochiesa for kind of 3 months, lived there with the people, with all the fellows. So it was fantastic for me because I learned really a lot about fire, the topic, and all of you, and a lot of ideas. So I also participate to the workshop, and then until the end, until August. And I really like to be involved in the organization, to work with Ilaria and in the environment. So I really share the philosophy and the method of NAHR to be like really in a friendly situation, but also to really research. And then I have, of course, the opportunity to know people and to know the valley. So I also spent a lot of time walking around and see the valley and the mountain. So for me, it was really interesting to be so nearby where I live there. So this summer was like an opportunity also to see this beautiful place that I like also to develop in the future with NAHR or with myself in Sottochiesa, whatever, like the technique around the valley, the stones, the purple stone, the graffiti technique, and some reference to my thesis also in the in a church nearby Sottochiesa. And then I was thinking about to say just something like from a curatorial point of view, if I can say. So I was thinking how, because I saw all the process of all of you, all the fellows. So I was thinking that this year, the fire was treated like in 3 main aspects. One, it's like the physical use of fire. So a lot of you have made the fire, firing. A lot of you have used the residues, the charcoal, the ashes for different way. But you tried to use in a physical way. Also, Francesca has used the technique of fumigation. So he used like the fire in this sense for painting, like. And then some of you have searching for the wildfire. We have made a lot of trip in the Monte Zucco together for see the traces of wildfire around the area. So we have also some still traces of trees dead and so on. And then Marvin have interviewed a lot of the players, I would say. So like firefighting or people that have saw the wildfire around the area. And then some forecasting. I was thinking also about Burak that make like a forecasting about the climate crisis and how maybe wildfire will increase also in Italy. And then something that I would like to call the flame lives. So I was thinking more about the performance that we have, Abraham, Carrie, and also Baptiste. So the rising movement of the fire, how the fire like go up and down, always leave, and how you have to maintain it. So you have to feed the fire or to stop the fire for not make it grow. So in the end, I think that it emerged like a positive aspect from the fire. Like, I think the renewal, it's the aspect that emerged more than the other in some way, because it seemed that fire is always something that make happen something. So something new happened or something from the fire burn and so on. So yeah, this is what I would like to share. And that's my presentation.
Thank you, Asia. This was great closing and summary. Fantastic. We have still a few minutes, and of course we are very close to the closing, but we can stay on 5 more minutes if we want, unless Zoom crashes. So if anybody has any thoughts, the chat was a way to keep in touch of voice, but if anybody has any thought or wants to share it, please unmute yourself and just we can be informal in our saying. But in the meanwhile, I would agree with Asia on the closing thoughts, and and the positive aspects that fire, and also was, in a way, indirectly, we fit in so many perspectives, right? It's really a puzzle of experiences that enrich one the other, even in afar. So it's really incredible to see all of you together today, for me at least, you know, to remember each experience over time, and from the cappuccino to the, you know, the extremely good food that Heidi served in Santa Ynez, and many of you had missed it, sorry, but it was really delicious, and etc. I mean, there is a story for any photo that I see, from the spiritual of Carrie to the more experiential of the kiln, the making of the clay, the dancing of Abraham in the hills, and of Baptiste also, that is not here, you know, also the people that are not here really contributed. And then many of us of NAHR, I also want to take a second to acknowledge Roxanne, Deborah, Asia, Sarah, Chiara, Gabi, so many, Maristella, that both have been there in presence, and they work so hard behind the scene. Asle, Richard, I mean, we are many, and from all over the world. So I'm really extremely thankful for this community. And in a way, today was a special moment to see all of you, but please stay in touch, or, you know, being an ambassador at NAHR is always a possibility, or, you know, coming back, or sending others, or there are many ways to be in touch if you desire to do so. Also to share what you have been doing. Abraham closed his saying that he worked on a show, and would be fun to see it. Even just a link or a tag to NAHR will share what you guys are up to. Even if it's not related to fire, we can, you know, keep really the community far and close, alive. I don't know, anybody has any other thought, or I keep rambling otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just posted in the chat, but it was great to see some familiar faces. I really appreciated hearing the presentations of the others. It makes me wish that we were all able to share space in person together, either in Soto Chiesa or elsewhere. And if people find their way to BC, Canada, if you're near the Okanagan, drop me a line. It would be great to reconnect.
I will.
Well, thank you, everyone. If you want to unmute and just say goodbye. And again, it was wonderful seeing you all. And see you next time. If you are in person in LA, come and we'll connect.
Yeah.
Ilaria, can you tell us the upcoming events in LA?
Yes, actually, we had 2 slides to close it. So let me, if Asia could share it, if you have a patient to be on still for 2 minutes, I can definitely was part of the final game. So we have a calendar. Our best way to be in touch is through the social media. We have a calendar for 2025 that mirrors many of the events, both trying to stay online so we can be connected and in person. And then next slides, the first event we have forthcoming is November 9th at Metabolic Studio to present our book, and you're all welcome to join. It's in a week. Unfortunately, the official information is not out yet, but would be lovely to see you all that are nearby. And the next one will be possibly December 3rd. It might be December 4th. This one will be in Silver Lake at Bestor Architecture Space, and we will be mostly talking about the new minerals, but there will be also for your local fellows a space, if you are here and want to join, for you to kind of repeat a little bit of what we did today, maybe in a shorter version, to say goodbye to fire. So we will be in touch with as soon as we have the final date. So these are the 2 forthcoming in-person events. And then starting January, we start a series of salon The first one will be by Tristan and Javiera on lithium and sugar, etc. So we have really many. Heidi, it's difficult to remember all of them, but social media will be, you know, a place for you to go to, and I will be in contact with the Los Angeles-based fellows for the two local. If you guys want to contribute, participate, it will be wonderful, because as the last slide will show and share, NAHR's participation. So again, thank you all, and we stop sharing and recording, but we are staying on the thing to say goodbye. We see also Grazia, our newest ambassador, and welcoming her again.
Hi, everybody. It was fun to see all your faces again, and also to know your projects, because unfortunately I missed them when you presented it in Sotto Chiesa. So I'm very happy. I'm very proud of the work you did.
And yeah, I see Deborah and Roxanne and everyone else. So yeah, it feels melancholic almost to shut down the recordings.